Alan Mendelsohn, The Boy from Mars by Daniel Pinkwater. Chapters 23 and 24. Chapter 23. We had agreed to knock off mind control tricks for the rest of the day, at least big tricks that might get people stirred up. I did manage to knock 22 minutes off the school day by speeding up the master clock that controlled all the clocks in the classrooms. As we were leaving school, it occurred to me that everybody was going to be 22 minutes late in the morning, except Mendelsohn and me. Later, Alan Mendelsohn persuaded me that we'd better be late too, so as not to arouse suspicion. Alan Mendelsohn had a lot of junk in his room. He liked to pick up all sorts of things in the street and in empty lots. He had lots of wire and odd pieces of metal that came off cars and machinery. We headed for his house to see if we could work out a better type of antenna. On the way there, we picked up a brick from a place where they were building a house. That was going to be our test mind control subject. The idea was to try the different antennas on the brick, giving it the same mental command each time. The best antenna would get the best performance. We set the brick in the middle of the floor of Alan Mendelsohn's room. Then we took turns giving it commands to rise into the air, without using the antenna at all. It didn't budge. Then we both commanded it at once. No results. Then we pointed the metal ruler and the ballpoint pen refill at it and gave simultaneous commands. No soap. Alan got a big coil spring. He put that against his forehead and commanded the brick to rise. It wobbled a little. We tried loops of wire, half an army bayonet, a metal tennis racket, a Boy Scout trumpet, and various odd bits of metal. We didn't know what they were. Nothing made the brick rise or do anything more than vibrate slightly, the way it might if a heavy truck went by. Mendelsohn dug around in his closet, which was very full of all sorts of odd junk, and came up with something that looked really promising. It was a rabbit ears television antenna, but not the ordinary kind. This one had knobs on it and 8 rusty brass-plated hoops encircling the base, in addition to the 2 rabbit ears, each of which had a little crystal cylinder about halfway up with a coil of copper wire inside. Super Signal Booster, it said on the plastic base in letters of tarnished gold. This definitely looked like it would do the job. There were 2 wires coming out of the base of the Super Signal Booster, and we each took one of them and pressed the little brass horseshoes at the end to our foreheads. We gave the command, "Rise, rise." The brick shot up to the ceiling and made a large dent. Alan Mendelsohn and I looked at each other. This antenna really worked. We tried again. "Rise slowly." The brick floated up to the ceiling like a balloon and bounced gently against it. "Descend." We forgot to say slowly. The brick fell like a brick and made another big dent in Alan's floor. "We need to practice with this," Alan Mendelsohn said. "This antenna certainly has possibilities," I said. "With this antenna and a little practice," Alan Mendelsohn said, "we could..." His voice trailed off. "We could make the school float," I said. "Yeah, we could," Alan Mendelsohn said. "We could levitate it." "Levitate?" "Yeah, that's what it's called when you cause something to float in the air. That's what we just did with this brick. It's just about the hardest thing to do in all magic. You almost never see it." Alan Mendelsohn was really excited at the prospect of making Bat Masterson Junior High School float in the air. "You don't think we could make it float away altogether?" I asked. "We'd have to practice a lot first," Alan Mendelsohn said. "Just getting it off the ground is going to be no easy feat. What's more, we have to decide if we want to send it up empty or with everybody on board. If we send the school up loaded, we have to be very sure we can set it down again gently, or we'll wind up killing everybody." Alan Mendelsohn had a point. In fact, he had a number of them. Mind control was one thing when you were dealing with a pebble or even a brick. But when you started sending buildings up into the air, you had to know what you were doing. We needed to do a lot of practicing if we were going to get it right. The workmen at the construction site had gone home. We went back to practice lifting bricks. Behind the place where they were building, there was a grassy hill. We went there and sat down with the super signal booster pointing at the big square pile of bricks. The brick pile was 40 bricks long and 12 bricks across. It was 20 bricks high. So there were 480 bricks to a level and a total of 9,600 bricks in the pile. We commanded one brick to rise, just an inch. We didn't want to attract any attention. It rose up an inch, and then we commanded it to set itself down. Then we had 2 bricks rise an inch and set down again. That worked. 3 bricks, 4 bricks, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 20, 25. And the 25 bricks dropped with a loud crash, landing slightly out of line, instead of settling neatly into rows as they had when we tried the same trick with a smaller number of bricks. A couple of the bricks even cracked when they fell. I was afraid of that, Alan Mendelsohn said. We don't have enough power. Just then, an exterminator's truck came past. Dr. Kilsum, it said on the side of the truck. All his patients die. There was a picture of a cartoon guy in a doctor's suit. He had a full bag full of carpenter's tools and was holding a flit gun. For some reason, I thought of Dr. Prince. Holy cow, I said. I've got an appointment in Hogborough with my psychologist in less than half an hour. I'm going to be late for sure. I'll ride into Hogborough with you, Alan Mendelsohn said. I've got nothing to do. We ran for the bus. We were lucky. One was just coming when we got to the bus stop. If we ran from the bus terminal to the office building, I'd only be late 5 minutes or a little more. We were sweating when we arrived at the building where Dr. Prince had his office. Alan rode up in the elevator with me. People stared at us. I guess we looked strange to them. 2 sweating kids in tennis shoes in a fancy office building in downtown Hogborough. Dr. Prince, this is my friend Alan Mendelsohn. Is it okay if he waits here for me? I asked. Of course it's all right, Dr. Prince said. You're more than 5 minutes late. You must be full of aggression. That's a good sign. Come in, Leonard, my boy. I went into Dr. Prince's office. He seemed very happy that I had come in late. Psychologists are strange people. Well, Leonard, Dr. Prince said, tell me what happened when you came back to school after being absent for 4 days. Nothing happened, I said. Nothing? See? What did I tell you? Dr. Prince seemed really happy. I guess he was a nice guy, just misguided. And you came here late, he went on. You weren't afraid to be late. I'm really pleased with your progress, Leonard. I decided to tell Dr. Prince about Klugarsh mind control and hyperstellar archaeology and making bricks rise into the air. He seemed to want so much for me to confide in him. It wasn't his fault that he was a psychologist and got things mixed up. I told him about going to Samuel Klugarsh's bookstore and everything that happened since. He made a note in his little book when I told him about the fresh corn muffins at the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor, and he wanted to know the address. When I got through telling Dr. Prince all about my new powers, he said, Leonard, I can't tell you how pleased I am that you trust me enough to share your psychotic fantasies with me. Now we'll really make some progress. They're not psychotic fantasies, I said. I'm telling you the truth. Well, you'll have to prove that to me, Dr. Prince said, rubbing his belly and removing an imaginary hat. I had left my metal ruler and ballpoint pen at Alan Mendelsohn's house, and we had hidden the super signal booster in the bushes when we ran for the Hogborough bus. So all I could have done to prove my powers would have been to make Dr. Prince rub his belly and remove his hat, which he was already doing. Besides, I didn't really feel like proving anything to him. I was sort of mad at him for making fun of me. Let him believe whatever he wanted to. Chapter 24. Dr. Prince walked me to the door of his office. Alan Mendelsohn was sitting in the waiting room reading a copy of Psychology Today. On the cover was a picture of the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, and written across the cover, diagonally in yellow block letters, it said, "How to tell if you hallucinate." "I'm glad to see you're making friends, Leonard," Dr. Prince said. Alan Mendelsohn put down his magazine, and we both moved toward the outer door. Dr. Prince followed us. "Don't worry about a thing," he shouted down the hall as we headed for the elevator. "I've cured people twice as crazy as you." Alan and I rode down in the elevator. The people in business suits and high heels all looked at us again. The elevator filled up. "So the doctor says there's no hope for you?" Alan Mendelsohn asked me. "No, he said it's incurable," I answered. The people in the elevator all looked at me. "The lucky thing is there isn't a leper law in this state, so I can live at home if I want to." "Yeah, that's good," Alan Mendelsohn said. "Otherwise you'd have to go to that place in Hawaii." Somebody pushed the button and the elevator emptied out on the 7th floor. We were alone in the elevator. "Look," Alan Mendelsohn said, "have you got any money on you?" I had about $4. Mendelsohn had about $6. "Let's have supper at the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor. I'll call my mother and tell her I'm eating at your house, and you can call home and say you're eating at mine. There shouldn't be any problem." It was a good idea. We found telephone booths in the lobby of Dr. Prince's office building and made our calls. The rush hour was almost over. The streets of downtown Hogborough were nearly empty. A few late workers rushed to catch buses and trains. The stores were closing. It was just about dark. Alan Mendelsohn and I set out for the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor, our Fargo Brothers rum-soaked curlicues glowing red in the chilly wind. As we got away from the downtown business district, the streets got quieter and emptier. We moved away from the warmth and bustle around the bus station and into colder, darker streets. We zipped up our jackets and walked fast, puffing our cigars. A motorcycle club roared past us. "Knights of Power," it said on the backs of their jackets. Bunched together, the motorcycles made a noise like running a ruler along an iron fence or a radiator, only much louder. We watched the red taillights get smaller and smaller in the distance. It was just a little bit scary. All the buildings around us were dark. They weren't office buildings. They contained little factories, tailor shops, wholesalers, and warehouses. They were all dark. There wasn't anyone on the street but us. The lights of the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor 2 blocks away made a welcome sight. As we got closer, we saw that the storefront was surrounded by a little puddle of brightness made by the light bulbs behind the steamy window and the red neon sign which said "Eat." Parked outside the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor were 6 or 7 motorcycles, shiny ones, with all sorts of gadgets and decorations on them. Each of the motorcycles had a fancy dragon or alligator either painted in gold on the gas tank or worked into a fancy chrome backrest. We figured they belonged to the motorcycle club that had passed us earlier. By this time we could smell all sorts of good cooking smells and hear the faint clicking of dishes and silverware. When we opened the door, a blast of noise, warmth, and the most incredible smell of chili hit us. Now, up to that time, my only experience with chili was the stuff out of a can and stuff they served in the cafeteria in my old school. Right away, just from my first whiff, I could tell that this stuff was very different from the chili I had run across so far. When my glasses unfogged a little, I could see a sign hanging behind the counter. It said, "Chili, $1, regular, H-bomb, green death." The guy behind the counter was serving up the chili in white bowls. It seemed like everybody in the place was eating chili. The Knights of Power Motorcycle Club had pushed 2 tables together. They were eating the Green Death chili. I could tell because it was green. All the other chili was regular chili color. "What's yours, boys?" the guy behind the counter asked. We played it safe and ordered the regular chili. He handed us bowls of the stuff, a spoon apiece, and a stack of crackers, and we carried our stuff over to an empty table. The chili tasted great. It was hot, too. Alan Mendelsohn said that he thought he could have handled at least the H-bomb variety. I couldn't have. The regular chili made me sweat and see little spots before my eyes. There was a sort of serve-yourself stainless steel sink with racks of water glasses over it. You press the glass up against this metal horseshoe thing and with little rubber tips, and the glass fills up with cold water. We made quite a few trips to get water. We liked the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor. It was warm and cozy and friendly. The motorcycle guys didn't seem sinister or bad or anything like that. They just ate their Green Death chili and talked quietly among themselves. In the kitchen, a radio was playing, some kind of foreign music I'd never heard before. It sounded like something between banjos and bells. It was nice. Samuel Klugarsh walked in. He saw us and walked over. "Hello, students," he said. "Mind if I join you?" He went to the counter and came back with 2 bowls of Green Death. Then he went back to the counter again and returned with an enormous stack of crackers and a mug of hot chocolate with double marshmallows and whipped cream. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why this guy wasn't fat. Samuel Klugarsh crumbled the crackers into his 2 bowls of Green Death chili. "How are you doing with the hyperstellar archaeology?" he asked us. One of the Knights of Power spun around and glowered at us for a moment. He had a big, bushy mustache. Then he turned back to his friends and his chili. The motorcycle guy had distracted me. Samuel Klugarsh spoke again. "It was hyperstellar archaeology, wasn't it? Mu and Lemuria and Atlantis and all that?" "It's been very interesting, Mr. Klugarsh," Alan Mendelsohn said. "At first we couldn't understand the book at all. It just seemed to be full of all sorts of wacky facts. Then the hyperstellar archaeology course actually mentioned us by name." "You're putting me on," Samuel Klugarsh said. No, it's the truth," I said. "The book said that the ancient Lemurian sages had predicted that one day 2 boys named Leonard Nebel and Alan Mendelsohn, that's us, would read an account of their deeds." Samuel Klugarsh looked stunned. "Are you actually sure this happened?" he asked. "It was right there in black and white, Mr. Klugarsh. Actually, blue and white, since it was mimeographed," Alan Mendelsohn said. The biker with the bushy mustache, the one who had turned around and looked at us, was obviously listening in. He was leaning back in his chair so he could hear what we were saying. I never know what to do in situations like that. I mean, it's worse when you're the one listening and you can't help it. Sometimes people have family fights in restaurants, or holler at their kids, or talk about all kinds of personal stuff. And there you are sitting right next to them. I didn't really care if the guy in the Knights of Power jacket listened or not, I decided. There was no way he was going to know what we were talking about anyway. If I hadn't actually seen proof that you guys could attain state 26, I'd never believe this for a minute, Samuel Klugar said. As it is, I have another copy of the course at my shop. I've never read it. That is to say, I've never read it for a long time. But I'll have a look at it. Where exactly did it mention you guys by name? It was just before the part where it talks about Yojimbo's Japanese English dictionary, I said. The motorcycle rider, the one who'd been eavesdropping, had a coughing fit. Samuel Klugarsh turned around and pounded him on the back. "Oh, what's the matter, buddy? Did something go down the wrong way?" he said. "You've got to go slow with that green death if you're not used to it." He turned back to us. "Eating hot chili is an art," Samuel Klugarsh said. "The first thing you have to learn is to ignore the pain. You see, pain is your body's way of warning you that something is happening to it, that it is harmful. For example, if you put your finger in a candle flame, the pain tells you to take it out before it gets burnt to a crisp. Now, in the case of eating hot chili, the peppers give the illusion of pain. But in this case, it isn't harmful. There's nothing better for you than hot chili. So you just have to say to yourself that this isn't going to harm you." Samuel Klugarsh stopped talking to swallow a big spoonful of the green death. I could have sworn I saw blue sparks jumping when he dug into it. Then he covered his mouth with his fingertips and gave a modest burp. Dr. Prince walked in. He was holding a slip of paper. I guessed it was the page from his notebook on which he had noted the address of the Bermuda Triangle Chili Parlor. His glasses were all fogged up. "Look," I said, "there's my psychologist." Dr. Prince had gotten into an argument with the guy behind the counter. It seems they only made corn muffins in the morning and were usually all out of them by evening. Dr. Prince had come in for corn muffins, and corn muffins he wanted. He was giving the guy a hard time. Dr. Prince saw us and came over. "Oh, hello, Leonard," he said. "I thought you told me this place had the best corn muffins in town. Now I come in here and they don't sell me any. I'm most upset." Samuel Klugarsh stood up. "Our young colleague is correct about the corn muffins," he said, "but he neglected to tell you that what this place is really famous for is the Green Death chili, a secret recipe of the owner. I advise you to try it. By the way, I am Professor Samuel Klugarsh, Fellow of the Royal Astromental Society." He shook hands with Dr. Prince and then took him by the arm to the counter. The two men came back to the table with a bowl of green death apiece. It was Klugarsh's third. "Excuse me for just a moment," Samuel Klugarsh said, and returned to the counter. "Ah, Leonard," Dr. Prince said, "you must excuse my perturbed state a moment ago. I become unreasonable when I am denied gratification I have been anticipating. This is your young friend?" "Alan Mendelsohn," I supplied the name. "Ah, yes. And is the other gentleman, Professor Klugarsh, the one you were telling me about? The one who sold you the course in hyperstellar archaeology?" Samuel Klugarsh said. He had returned to the table balancing 4 cups of hot chocolate with double marshmallows and whipped cream. Out of his pocket, he took a great many saltines and deposited them on the table. "A fascinating topic, hyperstellar archaeology. We'll have a good old scientific discussion in a bit, but first, enjoy your meal, Doctor. I'm curious to know what you think of the Green Death chili." Dr. Prince scooped up a big spoonful of the stuff. At first, after he had popped it into his mouth, he had a sort of musing expression. Then he looked pleased. Then he looked surprised. Then he got very red. Then he grabbed handfuls of saltines and stuffed them into his mouth. By this time he was sweating freely. Then he ran to the stainless steel water dispenser and gulped 3 glasses of water. When he came back to the table, tears were streaming down his face. He loosened his collar and sat down. "Without a doubt, the best chili I've ever tasted," he said to Samuel Klugarsh. Samuel Klugarsh leaned across the table and clapped Dr. Prince on the shoulder. "A gentleman and a scholar," he said. "Now, eat up. If you don't go into shock from the first spoonful, it's clear sailing after that. Eat up now, then we'll have a good chat." So ends chapter 24, Alan Mendelsohn, The Boy from Mars.